Okay, well, I'm going to get started. 2:00, 2:01 now. Welcome everybody to the National Recycling Congress virtual meeting of 2022. Really happy to be part of this. My name is Diane Cohen. I'm the Executive Director of Finger Lakes Reuse. We're in Ithaca, New York. I am really thrilled to be back part of this conference and honored to be asked to be moderating this group of really amazing and committed people who are working toward the circular economy. So really honored to introduce them. Just very quickly about Finger Lakes Reuse here in upstate New York. We just celebrated our 15th anniversary. We're a nonprofit organization trying to really take a human-centered approach to materials management and how can we really maximize the impacts of reuse and repair for our local community. We've been averaging more than 20% growth over the last 10 years, and we now have 2 locations about 5 miles apart in a county of about 105,000 people, which includes 30,000 college students. And we have about 90 living wage employees, plus another 10 plus trainees, plus a nice volunteer corps. We retail a very broad spectrum of materials: furniture, household goods, building materials, books, clothing, textiles, shoes, really trying to make it easy for people to reuse in our community. And we've got a really robust and growing job training and workforce development program where people can learn marketable job skills through the action of reuse and build their careers. So I'm really honored to be here with my colleagues in this effort. And in order of appearance, as they're going to give presentations, we've got Norm Rattan from iWaste Not Systems, Laura Anthony from Zero Waste San Diego, Sue Beats Atkinson from SBM Management Services, and Elizabeth Chin Start from Start Consulting Group. So welcome again to everybody who's joined us today. And Norm, I'm going to turn it over to you to get us started.
Okay, and I do share my screen, and I have to do this. And then I have to go up here and see if I can get my present. I got something blocking my slideshow. So how do I do that?
It's the toolbar, so you can actually drag that.
Okay. Okay. Okay, are we there?
Success.
Yes.
Great. So my name is Norm Rattan. I am the owner of iWaste Not Systems. We're a company in Ontario, Canada. We do web apps for waste reduction. And today I'm speaking on a bird's eye view of reuse. Reuse is nothing new. It's been around since humans began walking on the earth. Until recently, it was an economic necessity. It wasn't driven by environmental concerns. It was driven by the need to use and reuse and reuse and reuse and then recycle stuff. So that because if you've got a flint is in short supply and you need an arrowhead, you better figure out how to make the most of what you have. So that was fine up until the 45, 46. I was born in 1946, just after World War II. And all of a sudden, a whole bunch of servicemen came back from World War II, and the population started to grow, and the economy started to grow, and we just went through the most boom in economic times and population growth that we ever seen. And what happened as a result of that was a bunch of things. Vance Packard was a kind of I think he was a reporter, but a partially sociologist. And he wrote an interesting book about how marketing had become preeminent and was persuading people to buy stuff they didn't need. And then the book on the left, Waste Makers, is the result of that. This is 1960, 61, 62. I'm the old guy in the room, old as the hill, so I can tell you all about this. You just gather around the fire. And in the middle is Silent Spring, Rachel Carson, the famous book about what we were doing with herbicides and pesticides and wiping out the ecology. So we had to do something about that. And of course, it took us 10 years. But in 1970, the EPA was set up by Richard Nixon, and Natural Resources Canada was set up by Pierre Trudeau. And they began to go to work to try to deal with the environmental and ecological issues that were coming out of all of this increased population and increased wealth. So another 10 years, and because we move exceedingly slowly, and all of a sudden John Bush, student at York University in Toronto, starts a summer recycling program in Kitchener, Ontario, 1981-82. And Woodbury, New Jersey does a program of its own. And so we begin recycling. So recycling is the answer to waste management, obviously. It was a little bit one step up from wasting things. We could at least grind the stuff up and make it into new stuff. So now we get up to the 1990s and we have a new problem. EPA and Natural Resources Canada put on all kinds of environmental restrictions on companies, but they can escape them by offshoring. So instead of making the stuff at home using high labor costs and high labor standards and higher environmental standards, we decided that we would get the stuff offshore from China, Indonesia, wherever, and import it. And so globalization begins in earnest. Wealthy countries with high standards outsource manufacturing. And of course, if it's good enough for manufacturing, it should be good enough for wasting, right? Or recycling. So then they start putting bundles of stuff together on the ships that brought this stuff from the east. They take all of the bundles of recyclable materials, supposedly recyclable, and begin shipping them back where the labor standards and environmental standards are low. So we basically have solved our environmental problems by offshoring them in other countries. And so that went on for a while. Sorry, I'm just a little ahead of myself. So it went on for a while until all of a sudden, a whole bunch of people in North America actually love to recycle, and they actually love to reuse and reduce. But there's some problems with stopping them from doing that. So first of all, the China sword, and then the green fence, and then the China sword came up. And the countries that we were exporting the waste to wouldn't take it anymore and demanded higher standards for it. And all of a sudden we had a recycling meltdown in North America. Just a quick point. So we get a lot of contamination in recycling and a lot of wish cycling going on. I view those as positives. I think what it means is a whole bunch of people really are demanding better systems. They want to get rid of the stuff. They don't want to waste it. And government should listen to them and then go back to them and talk to them about, okay, how do we fulfill this demand that people have? So if I were running for election, I would use that in my platform. So what's happening all of this time to the mouse in the room, reuse? Well, reuse is actually going along. Just because a whole bunch of people really they think reuse is cool and they're willing to do it even if it's not thriving. And so I've been at it for 18 years. When I first started, Diane was there, and a few other people were there. And reuse was going along, and they were struggling with how they could open up and run reuse operations. And that has still continued. But let me point to this. This is a Reuse Minnesota study. They did it first in 2012, again in 2019, and again in 2022. So the reuse economy in Minnesota is worth about $6 billion a year, which is $1,033 per person for every person in Minnesota. There are 10,600 reuse businesses, and 7% of all statewide businesses are involved in reuse. And there are about 55,000 jobs, or about 1% of overall employment in the state depends on reuse. That's not, you know, petty cash. And so what would happen if all of the states in North America, in the US, and all of the provinces in Canada copied the Reuse Minnesota and Minnesota Technical Assistance, or Minnesota pollution prevention work, and got a handle on where reuse sits in the scale of things. So I can't go through everything that's happening in reuse, but there's a lot. Diane asked me before I started about, do I see a new resurgence of reuse? Yeah, I sure do. But when we started in 2004, hardly anybody talking about it. Now there's all kinds of stuff coming online. So I'll give you 3 personal examples of reuse in my life. My son John is a computer programmer. He's our chief programmer, but he's also an electronic hobbyist. And so he goes online for bigclive.com. He's a Scottish guy from Scotland, and he delves right down into consumer electronics and what to do with them, how to fix them, how to make them work, and so on. He's got a huge following. There are all kinds of people doing this. It doesn't show up, I don't think, on the radar. My wife loves refreshing and refinishing and renewing furniture. So she sends me around to pick up stuff on the roadside or wherever we can get it for cheap. And then she fixes it all up, and some of it we give away we gave a couple of dressers away to kids who didn't have them, and some of she sells to pay for the supplies. There's a whole cottage industry doing this online. Finally, the guys at the bottom are 2 high school dropouts from Alberta. They're called Young Farts for RV Parts. And what they do is they buy or take used RVs, which have had some water damage or have been in an accident. And so if your RV fridge breaks, a new one will cost you 2,500 bucks. These guys will sell a used one for 500 bucks. And I looked all over the place for these RV parts. I was fixing up an old travel trailer just for fun, and I couldn't find anything. These guys just got funded by Shark Tank in Canada. So here's a couple of things we're doing. One is the University of Manitoba Reshop Online. So they had a reshop at the university, but they're trying to move that online and open it up so all the students, staff, and faculty, et cetera, can use it. So instead of having to bring something in new to the university, if they already have one, here's their inventory of what they have on hand in the warehouse. And then we're talking to a couple of other universities about this system and then hooking them up with each other. So that's a trader's marketplace online. What other things can we do? You'll hear lots of ideas in the rest of the presentations about how to make the present system better. There are all kinds of ways. Universities can set rules, no procurement of new stuff if you already have one in storage. Municipalities can say, we no longer accept that at landfills. You now pay per throw. Restores, build, reuse, and thrift stores. A shout out for Construction Junction in Pittsburgh, which is working on a reuse retail system. So that software for inventory management and point of sale for reuse building stores, and possibly could be used for thrift stores and others. Here's another project we're working on. It's called the Delaware Recyclopedia. And we call it Delaware Recyclopedia because it's a hook. People understand recycling. And so we go, well, this will bring them here. But it's really a sustainable materials management directory and guide. So we don't stop at recycling. We want to put all that hidden activity that is being done in reducing and reusing online. So we want to have a database of who is doing what, where in Delaware. And then we put a guide on it so that consumers and businesses and organizations can come in and find out who's doing it and what the best practices are for doing it, and point them to those people who are doing it. Click, I got the phone number, I got the location, I know how far it is from us, so we can then do something about reuse instead of dreaming about reuse, is how I would call them. But there's a problem. Back in 1972, when the EPA was started, a governor of Wisconsin and a senator, Gaylord Nelson, had a really interesting quote: "The economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment, not the other way around." Okay, it's a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment, but we don't act that way. We act as if the economy is prime and the environment is an afterthought. So what I'm trying to say is, the reason that it's so hard to reuse is it's the economy, stupid. We exclude the
Norm,
price.
we're
Yep.
getting to the end here, Norm.
I'm almost done.
Great, thank you.
Exclude the price of environmental issues outside the price of things. And if we keep doing that, we will forever be pushing the boulder up the hill. We need to tip the scales, and there are ways to do it. Fortunately, our Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, right now, are making some good noises about having global trading without values based in it is the wrong way to go. And Mark Carney, the former Goldman Sachs guy, former Governor of Bank of Canada, Governor of Bank of England, now working for the UN, is talking about embedding environmental in economics. So if we can get to that, it will be a game changer. The playing field will change, and all of a sudden, a whole bunch of entrepreneurs like me will rush in to make money, shamelessly make money off of reuse. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Norm. Yes, and to encourage people, if you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat and we'll get to those at the end. So I'm going to turn this over to Laura Anthony, and take it away, Laura. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Hi, my name is Laura Anthony. I am the current president of Zero Waste San Diego, and it's an organization that started in 2007. And we talk about education on zero waste practices and technology. And right now, we've talked about recycling to death, and now we want to talk about repair, because repair is a major part to get to that zero waste goal that we all are looking for. Back in 2015, I started San Diego Fix-It Clinic, and you can actually go to the next one. At a local library. I was a librarian at the time, and I was trying to find something to engage the community on, just a really innovative program to engage the community. And these are the reasons why I started the Fix-It Clinic, and the reason why repair is so important. And as we know, when we're talking about all these conferences, that we're drowning in waste, and literally in our ocean and everything. And so we need to figure out ways to extend the product life and to be better consumers. And so the overconsumption, and to avoid the overconsumption. And so right here, to make biggest thing is to talk about to make businesses responsible, and to avoid the planned obsolescence. And a big thing that I'm looking towards for right to repair legislation is to include rate of repairability on packages. So when you, as a person that goes to buy something, you can look at a product kind of like the circle, like the arrows, the chasing arrows on your plastic bottles, to let them know what the rate of repairability of that product you buy, because you probably would buy something more of an 8 or a 9 versus a 1, knowing that that's not going to be able to repair, or it will disappear. So this is why Fix-It clinics and repair is so important. You can go trying to be more proactive versus reactive. So And we can go to the next one as well. I'm kind of going all over, but this is also a big reason why repair is important, is to look at what the waste characterization currently in your landfill, in your current landfill. So this is the city of San Diego, because we're area San Diego. And if you're looking at what's going into the landfill now by the 12 categories that was established by Dr. Dan Knapp from Urban Ore, you can tell that reuse and like textiles, if you want to lump that together, for the city of San Diego, it's about 37,000 tons that goes into the landfill every year. And if you want to break it down further, what the items that are going into the landfill, majority of the items, 10% of that items is perfectly fine, and they can be diverted and actually be used over and over again in the same, the reason, like as a desk is a desk. If 40% of that is just minor repairs needed, and those are the things that are going in the landfill. 40% can be refurbished or upcycled. So we say it's a desk, but it can be a table, it can be something else, make it into repurpose it into something else. And then 10% of it is discards. But if you want to look at it as a money saving or money making kind of thing for municipalities, Dr. Dan Knapp puts a price tag on materials to be $200 to $500 per ton of these items. And so this is a missed opportunity for municipalities to if they don't take advantage of this opportunity, is a $2.6 million price tag for them. You can go to the next one. So Fix the Clinic was created by Peter Mui in Berkeley. He's a student in Berkeley. His whole mentality, he's an MIT graduate. His whole mentality is do it together, disassembly, troubleshooting and repair, open it up and see how it works and hopefully fix it. Now we all know that not everything can be fixed, but we have a good time trying to figure it out, empower ourselves to open it up and try to see what's wrong with it, and then try to fix it if we can. This is a in-person, but they're now creating now in a hybrid situation. We haven't really delved into it in San Diego, but we're looking into it, where we have people online as coaches, or even people that are trying to fix things independently, working together with a coach at one of our clinics to try to repair the item. And anytime you want to know any information about or how to start a Fix a Clinic, that's a great blog on that slide. You can go to the next one. Okay, so like I said, I started this when I was a librarian at a downtown library in San Diego, and want to create up an innovative program. And a lot of my service people are homeless. So I saw a lot of things that were wrong, like they're broken phones or broken laptops, or they had rips in their clothes and stuff like that. And people come to the library as a kind of like seeking information, DIY kind of life. And so we wanted to provide an opportunity to teach people how to empower them to repair their products and to extend it and not to have to purchase new ones. So we created these pop-up events. So I had this at the Central Library. I had it about 6 months. My career went a different direction and I couldn't keep the program going. So with permission from the library, I put it on my nonprofit that I started in 2007. And so Xeria San Diego took it over to make it so that we extended throughout the county of San Diego. So we created these pop-up events throughout the community, and we put them in local churches. Libraries, of course, are a perfect place. Community gardens, local breweries, any place with a plug and some shelter, it's a good place to be. It's volunteer run. It occurs, it occurs about once a month. We now are starting to get so popular that we're doing it twice a month. And then we've created great partners. So we have a lot of partners throughout the community. Right now, our impacts, we've got about over 100 clinics that we've created since 2015, a little bit of a hiatus during COVID. We've diverted over 3,000 pounds of diverted from the landfill, either through repair or recycling. And we've helped almost over 700 people throughout the whole clinic. The repair rate is about 60%. But it's still a good time. Want to keep going? Next one. Okay. So basically I'm going to talk about how you can start one in your community and the steps you can take to do this. So what I do is that I use Eventbrite. Eventbrite is a very easy to use, free service, and it provides a lot of conditional questions. And as an old librarian, I like as much information as possible coming to me so I know what is to expect. So when I ask the question is, what's coming, what's the item? I ask them for a model and a serial number so we can look this up. What is the problem with the item? And if you were to bring it to us, could we make the problem happen? Because a lot of times, because I don't know, I mean, as a librarian, people say, my computer's not working. And if you know anything about tech, the first question you ask, is it turned on? So user error is a big issue. So, and a lot of times I'll just stand over people. I'm like, oh, it looks like it's working. So, because they just need the confidence and the empowerment to help them move forward. And a lot of times people come in and it's like, it didn't work before, but it works now. Well, and also the next big question is, have you tried to fix it? Because when people try to fix it, they might mess it up a little more, and it's going to be a different situation. So when this information comes in, I then send it to my awesome skilled volunteers. They do a little research and say, okay, they may need this part. They may need to do this. Can I take a picture? I can get more information from it. And so then I can then refer this to the actual attendees. Because it's a free event, we don't provide any parts. I want them to actually take more ownership of it and go further trying to repair it themselves. So we provide a lot of reminder emails because that's the key. At the event, I check everything. And as an environmentalist, I weigh things. I like to know the diversion rate. These are great stats to use for the cities if they want that information, and also good for grants for future projects. So we have a check, and then we have an exit survey. And when we actually celebrate successes, so when someone repairs something, I'm pretty much the mascot of the program. I don't really know how to fix. I'm really a super glue and duct tape kind of girl. So when we successfully repair something, we ring a bell and I hoot and holler. And I'll usually say, you need to call that person for dinner and across the street so they can see what's going on. So hoot and holler and a lot of fun. Then after the event, we serve surveys out and we collect the day's statistics, and then just kind of relax and have fun after we realized we did such a great job. Go to the next one. Okay, so things you need in a pop-up site: tables and chairs. You need to cut some canopies for the elements. You need tools. And a lot of times my coaches will bring their own tools. And I have some gentlemen. I've got at least 4 people that are in their 80s that have followed me around since 2015, and the amount of tools that they've actually purchased and accumulated since this clinic, they've had them all branded with with San Diego Fix-It Clinic logo on it, and they are super excited about everything. So we provide some basic tools, but a lot of people bring things with them. I always ask them to put like a nail polish kind of color on your tools, so that kind of identifies that's yours, because things tend to grow legs and walk away. So a lot of it is a bit of marketing and some patience. You want to keep going? Next one. So I'm wrapping up. This is kind of a kind of summary of what we do on a regular day. I collect the zip codes. I collect what the attendance, what's registered, what's walk-in, and we have this was a Carlsbad event in April, and we diverted about 446 pounds of trash diverted from the landfill through repair and recycling, and about 60% repaired. And then I do, of course, the demographic as well. Next slide. I don't think we have time to do much of a video, but I'm going to do this one video. Yeah, let's go back to the next one. Let's show this video. And this kind of is showing you what it looks like at the event. So this is right around COVID. So we have to kept outside. I want to make sure everyone felt secure and safe coming back to an event kind of situation. There's music, but that's okay. You don't need to hear me hoot and hollering afterwards. It's very shrill. So, but it's just kind of fun. It's very busy. I give everyone aprons. People say, well, what about t-shirts? I'm like, t-shirts walk away. Aprons keep going and reuse all the time and keep moving things forward. So just kind of going over the stats again. Really important is providing great partners. If you do it in communities, try to encourage repair companies to come in and be part of this. I'm going to the next slide. And these are future projects. We're looking at a mobile, this is a trailer that's a pop-up mobile trailer that was established in Netherlands. They gave us the blueprint to create something. So we want to create 4 to put in north, south, east, west of San Diego so that we can have them all over the place. We also are trying to create apprenticeship and mentorship programs to help people aged out foster youth and refugees that are coming into San Diego, because we are an asylum state. And to provide more workshops. So we're doing some repair workshops. Go to the next slide. And then I think we'll just pop around. We don't need to do that. We'll keep going. And then these are the kind of the skills that we are looking for the coaches. Electronics, computers, bicycles, sewings. I kind of throw people very casual. I just throw people kind of in. And if you know anything about fixer people just kind of go into it. They're just really into repair. Go to the next one. Okay, and this is pretty much my silly marketing. I'm just very all about, tongue in cheek. And so this and get a good laugh and smile, because if you make people laugh, they'll come more and more. But thank you so much.
Fantastic, Laura. Amazing programs. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Sue, who's ready to go. Great. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Number one, I work with businesses. I work for a janitorial company that we support not only green cleaning through janitorial, but also the waste minimization and waste programs. I'm heavily involved in zero waste, especially TRUE, total resource use and efficiencies. And so I'm always looking at, how do I eliminate this? That usually, when I first started 29 years ago, we used to save a lot of money just by recycling, and it helped guide businesses to do more. That's not happening anymore. Yes, I save a little bit of money, but they're really trying to find more savings. And so we want to evaluate, get this to move. We want to evaluate ways that we can help save our clients money, as well as reduce and or reuse. And so I always start out with pallets. Pallets are the easiest way to reduce. The first thing I do is I work with the food service, the janitorial companies, and the copier paper companies, and ask them to start taking their own pallets back. Now, at small organizations, it makes a huge impact, because someone is going to have to collect these from common areas and ensure that they're not a safety issue, because they lean against walls and people bump them. But if I can get people to actually return them, it eliminates things that are on my site. I don't have to deal with them. I don't have to pay to get rid of them. And I don't have to find somebody to actually recycle them. So that's my starting point. The second point of this is, let's start a reuse program. And most of the programs through businesses, I like to document what the process is, because people change. And if I at least have documentation that says, here's what we're looking for. We're looking for a 4-way pallet. I can put a pallet jack on any end, and it is a reusable pallet. Can't be missing any boards. Those are the simplistic guidelines for a pallet reuse program. And then the next part of this is tracking. One of the simplistic things that we do is we actually use painter's tape, put a line across the wall at 10 pallets, and every 10 pallets, they put a mark on a piece of paper. They then text or send us a picture of how many they've reused. And we actually quantify that not only by weight, but also by savings, because they have to pay for new pallets. So that's one of the ideas that we use. A different one that we've looked at to help minimize is a zero waste event. Now, the key to this is really trying to get everyone involved to know that we are trying not to generate any waste. You can see a stack of compostables here. These are actually bamboo reusables that are being used in the cafeteria. They pull them out specifically for these events. That is the goal out of it. And they actually found a lot of them in a reuse program through the thrift stores. But how do we go and communicate this? And one of the most important parts of trying to reduce is to have people man these containers at an event, which helps educate the population as they migrate back to the business. So we're always looking at, how do I educate you? How do I keep it simple? How do I keep it quick? And really get people to think about what they are generating. Now, for these zero waste events, a little bit of pre-planning is, what is the communication? What are vendors allowed to bring on? If you've got food trucks, we've got to eliminate all of that extra waste that is generated. Is there a way to donate the food? So through a reuse program or a local shelter program, we can get that food donated. And then the last part of this is we actually sort the waste to see what is still left in the landfill. And then we work with the different teams to eliminate that waste. Okay, can you have it be a finger food so that I don't have to have plastic or compostable silverware? Is there a way to reuse the silverware and not have it go into the trash can? So that's a different way to look at it. We've done 2 events for one of these clients, so they're diverting almost 98%. The second event, we had less people supporting it and we got more participation. So it really is about educating them, and we've seen the results fall back inside the building, that people start thinking about where they're putting things. So it's a great educator. I think another way to look at reduction is not only that I am recycling. This is actually a great project that came out of Toyota many years ago. And they had a saying about reduce some, reduce more, and then, recycle some, recycle more, and then reduce. And what they've done is this was a catalytic converter box. It had a pallet, it was cardboard, and then every catalytic converter in here was a box. They got smart and they started working with all the different departments. They actually had their team make a metal box. It is reusable. It goes back to the center that sends them the catalytic converters, and they set the catalytic converters inside the box, eliminating a substantial amount of material that originally was recycled. Nothing wrong with that. It's fabulous. But now we want to reduce as much as we can. So it makes you think about how you're running a process and what can be better. And it really involves talking to other people in the program, not just recyclers or people that are handling the material, but the thinkers and the doers really like to make change. They just have to be involved. In addition, one of the things that we throw away a lot of, and I'm talking any kind of shipping department that has to pull a label out, gosh, Amazon, if we can only imagine how many they generate. All of that backing at this point is more of a plastic-based product, and we can't recycle that. No matter what you do, it's has too much plastic in it. We have found a vendor that is actually making a paper backing to the material. We just met with them, and you don't have to change out the equipment. It is about a 5% increase in the cost to having a paper backed, but 100% of that material can now go into your mixed recycling or your paper programs. In addition, I don't know how many of you guys are interested, but pull out your phone. We were really working on a better way to communicate, because the more people understand things, the better off we are. Signage is very boring. One of the things that we did prior to COVID is we worked with a very large software manufacturer up in Seattle, and they were using tablets throughout the facility, and you could click on any one of these items. So you click on the chip bag pops up and it says it's a landfill item. These are mostly plastic. This is why it's not recyclable, how long it sits in there. And we gave them a fact. Well, nobody's touching anything with COVID happening. So we've moved to a web-based tool that you can put on your phone. And so we're trying to eliminate a lot of signage, B, keeping it simple, and everybody's on their phone. So how do we help with that education? Short, sweet, and getting them to put things in the right place. Another thing that we've looked at is we work with a lot of pharmaceutical companies. We generate a phenomenal amount of these little boxes with these little pipette tips. And the worst part about these is they are recyclable, but they really mess up the MRFs. They just fall off everything. And so there's this company called Polycarbon. They've created a mailbox or mail-in box that they are then making lab plastics back out of these. Really quite impressive with the process. It's not, I'm not going to call it inexpensive, but I think it's just as profitable, I don't know what the word I want to use. I feel that it's a good direction to help us eliminate things. And so really it gives you a counter, it gives you weights, it helps you quantify things. And the lab teams are starting to really enjoy the thought process of, I'm not generating waste as long as I put it in the right program and get it reused. And so with everybody returning back to work, we're really looking at how do we eliminate all of the disposables that came out of the woodwork during COVID that honestly weren't needed, but everybody or big businesses decided that they had to use. We're going back to cups. We're going back to recommending people bringing in their own coffee cups or water cups so that they're not using disposables. We have a client that's actually in the process of going back to, they're giving them warning that these cups are disappearing soon. Please bring your own mugs back, or you're not going to have anything to get your coffee in. And they're actually eliminating all the disposables that were there. One other thing that we've seen is it's called Perfect Serving. And it is a machine that you can click on and you fill it with bulk items, coffee, creamer packets, or unfortunately they're chemical based, but they also have all the sugars that are in bulk, so you're not generating sugar packets and those little creamer packets. And so we're seeing a lot more eliminated waste out of that, and we're tracking those by what we're entering into the program as part of that diversion. And so I went through that relatively quick, but it just gives some examples of some of the things that we're really trying to do to eliminate, reduce, and reuse as much as possible. Thank you.
Fabulous work, Sue. Thank you so much. And our final presenter, we're going to turn it over to Liz. Liz, you're muted.
Thank you, that helps. So I'm really honored to be speaking with this great group of folks today and all the great work that's happening around the country. So today I'm specifically going to talk about what's going on in the Portland metro region and some work that I've done with the city of Portland. So bear with me as I'm technical difficulties. Thank you. So first, as we're talking about reuse, repair, and share, it's important to view it as an economy and understand what that economy is. So a lot of times when I'm talking about the reuse, I'll say the reuse economy, the repair economy, the share economy, and that really all is tied into the circular economy. And it's really important because there's so much value in this work that's being done. And, you know, whether or not there's money that's being transacted, I think it's important that we're continuing to assign value to this work that's being done in this space that we're talking about today. So, you know, and there's so much work that's being done both formally and informally, you know, through things like Buy Nothing groups, garage sales, or in Oregon, our very popular free piles that we have at the curb. And I'm sure many of us have done the thing where we've seen something on the side of the road that we knew that we could use, and we stopped and rubbernecked and backed up and went and picked up that item. So there's a lot of that that's happening throughout, both informally, but really the focus needs to be on some of that formal work that's being done. So like Norm said, entrepreneurs like him can come in and make a business out of it. But it's really great to see this work that's being done in the Pacific Northwest, but even throughout the country and around the world. We're seeing tool libraries, libraries of things, repair cafes, fix-it clinics, and all forms of reuse that are just really starting to be built into this beautiful circular economy. And we just really need to continue to figure out how we can continue to build and grow that economy. So how this work started for me is I started working with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability for the city of Portland, which shout out to Pete Chisholm Winfield. I saw him on the meeting. So what we did was we did a needs assessment for the reuse, repair, and share community. And so our original intention was to work with both nonprofits and for-profit organizations. However, being in the throes of the pandemic, businesses were just really under capacity and just didn't have the capacity to participate. But we were able to work with mainly nonprofits and a couple of for-profit businesses, and did one-on-one stakeholder engagements with over 25 stakeholders, and held 2 small group listening sessions, which was really important to bring these groups together to talk through what their shared challenges were, how they could continue to work together, and how we could start to make improvements in this space. And so in addition to identifying those needs and gaps, we also provided recommendations to the City of Portland Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, but also additional recommendations for other local governments so they could work together with BPS so the work that was being done in Portland wasn't being siloed. And so there were 5 major needs that were identified and 9 secondary needs. And the biggest one was space and storage. And it got to a point when I was conducting these interviews where I was almost waiting just to check that box of when somebody would say they had such a need for space and storage. Really, especially nonprofits, but also small local businesses, they need support with rent and affordability of spaces, accessible locations, storage, and just intake space to be able to process items, clean them, repair them, and get them all distributed for reuse. The second thing was groups really wanted support in addressing issues around equity and inclusion. Issues like gentrification, not meeting the needs of communities of color and low income communities, trying to figure out how they could center community voices in this work, and also looking at other issues like making their spaces accessible to folks with disabilities. You know, how is someone who's a wheelchair user accessing a reuse space? If you've been in any kind of reuse center, my background's in creative reuse, people like to rummage, and with rummaging comes a big mess. And when you have staffing capacity issues already, it's hard to keep up with that. But you have to be very intentional about how you are keeping your spaces accessible in this work and making it accessible for everyone. So the third major need identified was communications and marketing. So these organizations requested, and they said, hey, City of Portland, even if you could just use your social media platform to do a plug for these organizations and say, if you need building materials or you're working on a home project, go to the Rebuilding Center. Or if you're looking for creative materials, go to Scrap Creative Reuse. And so really working with local governments to use their platforms to amplify these messages. However, along with that, there also needs to be intentional messaging around closing the loop for reuse. We talk a lot about that in the recycling side of things. And we know, as recyclers, that if we don't have those end markets for our plastics and our corrugated, we're not going to have a successful recycling system and those items go to waste. It's the same thing with reuse. If it's one thing to collect items for reuse, but if we don't have folks to have those items distributed to, or even just to purchase those items, we're not closing the loop of reuse. So there needs to be a focus on that communications part of it. So the fourth item was funding and grants. There's just not a lot of grants or funding that's easily accessible, especially to reuse, repair, and share nonprofits. It's a lot easier for a grant funder to look at, feeding hungry children, which is super important. We know that. However, that's what reuse, repair, and share nonprofits are competing against. And so a lot of them are seeking earned income models or finding other ways to support their work. So, also there's a capacity issue. A lot of them don't have grant writers on staff, or they are too busy trying to do their mission of reuse, repair, and share. They don't have the capacity to work on those grants and, for work they're already doing. So there needs to be some funding and infrastructure for the work that they're already doing, because they're really filling a need in our communities. And so the last need was capacity and staffing. A lot of times, if you work in reuse, repair, and share, you're not making a living wage. You're not getting benefits. There's not a lot of resources with your coworkers. There's also limited staffing anyway, and organizations are spread so thin that they can't even afford to bring on additional staffing to help support the staffing they have. One organization said to me in the interview is that so many times reuse, repair, and share organizations just have to depend on the bottomless commitment of their staff members and people who really care about this work, which is not a sustainable model. And I'm sure if you work in the reuse, repair, and share field, you know that, and you see a lot of turnover because it's not always feasible to provide these living wages and benefits. So those were the 5 major gaps. And I will say too, if you go to resourcefulpdx.com, I'll share the link at the end. You can get a copy of the overview of that report that I did with City of Portland Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, or you can email me. My information will be at the end. But another part of identifying the gaps and needs in the reuse and repair space is I'm working with Oregon Metro, which is a government organization that is comprised of the Tri-County area surrounding Portland and including the City of Portland. So this study is focused mainly on bulky item reuse. So, we really wanted to identify what opportunities are out there to expand capacity for reuse of these items, how are we creating equitable services for everyone, and really strengthening the relationships between the Oregon Metro government body and these reuse and repair organizations and businesses. And so a lot of times we're seeing that many services are focused on collecting bulky items for disposal, but there's not really many options for getting those items collected for reuse. So we're seeing in our region a lot of these organizations that are starting to work with third-party junk haulers to collect these items, because transportation is such a big issue in this work. One other thing that Oregon Metro is doing is they're working on their garbage and recycling systems facilities plan, and they're really being intentional about including the reuse, repair, and share economy in this work. So going beyond that garbage and recycling side of things. So just really quickly, some of the additional gaps that were identified through the Metro part of the study was transportation is a huge issue. Folks, you know, how many of us go buy something really big and we don't know how to get it home? It's the same thing when folks want to donate to reuse organizations, and that's why they usually just call their garbage hauler to dispose of these items. So the transportation is a big issue, and you know, to these organizations, and also for people purchasing from these organizations, getting those items home. Accessibility is just such a huge obstacle, keeping things affordable, all of these things that really come into play when we're looking at reuse, repair, and share systems. Just like Laura touched on, things are just not made the same quality anymore. They're harder to repair. There's a lot of cost involved with repair. And sometimes folks have to make that choice of that it's cheaper to buy new than repair. So it's so great to see organizations like Laura's who are starting to really help our community and build that repair culture. So what do we do with all this information? And Jackie Kerouac-Fram, who's the executive director for the Rebuilding Center in Portland, said, if you're striving for systemic change, there needs to be policy behind it. And so that is so important. That's how we're going to actually make change. There needs to be policy and advocacy around these reuse, repair, and share systems. So some of the recommendations that I've made throughout the work that I've done is policy. We've got to include the expertise of the reuse, repair, and share community when we're creating policies and planning. And we're seeing a lot of great policy that's happening in Oregon with the EPR legislation. We have our Recycling Modernization Act, but reuse, repair, and share is not really strongly built into those policies. So we've got to make sure that we're including those voices. We need to see a shift in investment, where money is going. A lot of times, you know, it's really easy, especially for municipal governments and systems, to invest in landfilling and recycling systems, which those are the systems that we've built. Those are the ones we're comfortable with. But how do we shift that infrastructure and the investment to focus on that reuse, repair, and share? What kind of difference could we be making, and could these organizations be making if we were able to shift those resources? They need resources that
we got to wrap up because it's got 2 more minutes in the whole session. So
okay, so yes, so I think these slides will be shared. There's some great organizations doing collective work in this region, but feel free to reach out to me if you would like to see that full report or more information on this.
Great, thank you so much. And the session ends at 2:55, so I wanted to give a chance for we got a number of great questions in, so really nice to hear from all of you. Let's just say, here's a quick one. Sue, who's the paper backing provider? Someone was asking about that.
I can put it in the chat.
Okay, great. And is there, let's see, Laura, if your Fix-It clinics are online, then people from anywhere can attend?
Yeah, I answered a little bit in chat, but there are some virtual, the Canadian group of the Repair Cafe in Canada has a ongoing virtual program that anybody who wants to fix things can get on there with a bunch of skilled volunteers to help repair their items. There is a couple things going on. We're going to experiment on that soon. We just haven't done it yet.
Great. And then does anyone know if there's best practices in measuring curbside reuse capacity so that a municipality knows the quantity, types, and condition of discarded reusable products? Have any studies around this been done? Nobody knows about that?
Not aware of any.
Yeah, same here. Everybody wants data, but it's very, very challenging to get. And then let's see. Oh, I just wanted to comment, Laura, we're measuring closer to between $1,000 and $2,500 per ton through our reuse center. So I'd be interested in comparing notes and sharing data about the economic impacts of reuse, because you had closer to, was it $200 a ton or $250? And then let's see, is there a difference between reuse and reduce, and why are they important? I feel like that's a softball for this group, but.
I think it's being able to quantify savings, and reduce sometimes can be reusing. So a quick example is disposable servery versus compostable servery, because they both have a cost associated, to durables. So if I can eliminate the disposable or the compostable and have durables, I can still track the savings that's associated with that. So durables are reusables, but they're also reduce the product that's being thrown away. So depends on how you look at it.
Well, great. Thanks for that answer. Thanks for like the richness and the kind of like concentration of all this information in this very quick 55-minute session. So great to see you all. Thank you everyone for joining. It sounds like there's a 5-minute break, and then the next thing is at 3 o'clock. So, or 3 o'clock Eastern time. So take care, everyone, and keep reusing, repairing, and sharing, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.